So for product backlog item, there can be confusion. Then what is the difference between definition of done and acceptance criteria? So definition of done is more of a generic standards or checklist which your organization have it, and acceptance criteria are basically specific for a user story. So what it means is your acceptance criteria can be one of the checkpoint in your definition of done. So if there are say 10 items in definition of done, this one of the item can be your acceptance criteria. The other items can be say the design standards, the kind of testing standards, the kind of overall transition standards. So those can be the items as a part of definition of done, and acceptance criteria can be one of the sub item in the definition of done. So now let's talk about the description. So if you talk about the PBI product backlog item attribute, we should clearly describe the product backlog item. So a description has to be added sufficiently in a way saying that you should be able to refine your product backlog item to the depth which is required to be understood by all stakeholders. So your description has to be articulated in a way which is acceptable or which is understood by everyone. So that's a description. The next one is the next attribute which is important for the product backlog item is the order in which your items are ranked. So you should be ranking your product backlog item uh, in a logical sequence. You should ordering it from the perspective of the priority, right? So how you want to, or which is the feature, or which is the features of the functionality you want to build on the earlier part, right? So that's how you should rank and order your product backlog item. So it basically helps in determining the refinement of the product backlog item. So your ordering helps you to basically identify and move the items which is the most important on the top and the things which are relatively not important on the bottom of the product backlog item list. So these are the attributes for the PBI for maximizing the value. We should focus on the outcome. We should focus on the acceptance criteria. We should adhere to the definition of done. We should have a description for the PBI, and we should order them based on the requirement and based on the stakeholders' understanding of these requirement. So this is again another acronym, and a question can certainly be asked from this slide as well. So this is acronym called DEEP, wherein D stands for detailed appropriately, E stands for emergent, E is effort, effort sized, and then P is criteria. P is prioritized. So the good product backlog item characteristics is basically acronymed as a DEEP. So your backlog items have to be certainly deep. So when you say it has to be detailed approximately or appropriately, so whenever you're building a product backlog items, so you cannot have detailed description for each and everything, but then the detail should be appropriate for individual to understand, and it should be able to help the developer to take it forward, right? So your PBIs are ready for use, must be small in size with the plenty of detail which is required for the development team to take it ahead. So that's called detailed appropriately. The next is the emergent, which means and which says that the structure of a product backlog is constantly changing, it is constantly emerging, and it is highly adaptable. So which is again one of the pillars of the Scrum, which is transparent, inspection, and third is adaptable. So all your product backlog items are emerging in nature, they are constantly changing, and then they are highly adaptable as well. The next E stands for the effort size. So your each product backlog item has a size which has to be corresponding to the effort required for the team to develop those items. So that's a effort size, as in E stands for. And P is basically the prioritized item. So you need to have the PBIs which are destined for the next few sprints. They should be prioritized on the top of the product backlog. So there has to be prioritization of the key user stories or the key product backlog item which has to be taken in the next sprint. The least important or next important should be subsequently listed below in the PBI list. So that's how your A good product backlog characteristics is defined by the acronym called DEEP: detail, appropriately, emergent, effort sized, and then it has to be prioritized as well. So as part of product backlog module 5, now we will talk about the refining the product backlog. So how we refine and carry out the refinement of the product backlog as considered appropriate. So the product backlog refinement is certainly an ongoing activity. This is certainly a task, or it is certainly an act of breaking down the items into the uh, product backlog. So we try to break down the items which are there in the product backlog to a product backlog item, and these items can be pulled up and down based on the kind of overall understanding of the prioritization of these items. So the things which are there uh, highest on the priority, they are on the top. Things which are the least on the priority, they moves down. So if you see this across, so things which are there, things which are there on the top is basically on the high. Things which are there on the bottom, they are low priority. So if you refer to the product backlog item uh, after the product goal, these items have the highest priority.